The battle cats of Helicopter Maritime Strike Squadron 73 went down in the waters of the South China Sea while conducting routine operations from the aircraft carrier USS Nimitz. Search and rescue assets from the carrier strike group safely recovered all 3 crew members. Then, about a half hour later, an FA-18F Super Hornet fighter assigned to the Fighting Redcocks of Strike Fighter Squadron VFA-22 also went down in the waters of the South China Sea while conducting routine operations from the Nimitz. Both crew members successfully ejected and were also safely recovered.
Possibility for sustained tropical storm conditions, and hopefully we're avoiding the hurricane conditions in the central Bahamas. All right. All right. So we are coming up on the 8 o'clock advisory. So what do we get a 7 o'clock advisory for here? Why did we get a 7 update? What was that? I'm trying to figure out what the little update was. Did they give a track? Sorry, just trying to figure out what it was. 145, west at 5 and 941. All right. All right, anyway, so we got the intermediate at 8 o'clock. Again, let me be clear. And it's not going to be a track shift from the Hurricane Center. Now, we might see on my system, there be a little bit of a change in this because, again, the Navy, which is where I'm pulling this data from, in the intermediate advisories, they do give a track shift change. Typically, all that is a heads up, if you will, as to what the Hurricane Center is going to do in the next 3 hours, right? In coordination, in conjunction with everything. So we kind of get the information a little bit first. It may be slightly different, but if we see a little bit of a shove west, that is probable. I mean, it's close. The Hurricane Center did go a few miles west, but we're talking miles. You know, nothing more than that at this point in time. But we'll see how it plays out. You know, I think by tomorrow mid-afternoon, we'll have a little bit better idea of exactly when this turn north occurred. And if there is really going to be an east turn to it before the island. Remember your center line track here, you know, if we were to go due north, would brush the island. So the Hurricane Center is banking on, with this track of theirs, that there is a bit of an east turn before the island. All those are still a little bit up in the air. But again, direct impacts to Jamaica, highly, highly, highly probable. The forecast strength over Jamaica right now is a Category 4. Teetering, Cat 5, weakening from a 5 to a 4, but not much. The yellows and the greens, dry air. It's just less lower cloud tops on this infrared satellite imagery, right? So you see this a little bit. Some of the thunderstorm activity has faded away, right? You know, some of this convection east could be getting cut off from the main circulation. That happens a lot with these storms. If you were showing signs of, okay, this storm is, somehow getting weaker, these lighter yellows and greens would have to begin to penetrate the inner core. And right now, if we're looking at this thing being like a shield, right, it is as concentric as it can possibly be. No drier air is anywhere near the center. And the lightning strikes are indicative of a storm that probably is still just getting stronger. You do see a little bit of a shrinking of the eye at the end, possibly the beginnings of our eye wall replacement cycle, but fluctuations in diameter of eyes with a storm this large and this massive, we see it all the time. Okay. Nassau in the house, St. Lucia in the house, Cat Island is in the house. Appreciate all my friends. All right, real quick break. I'll be back literally in just a second. Then we'll get into the 8 o'clock advisory and we'll go from there. So see you guys in just a second.
Hey, Rusty and guys over at Media Mundo.
There we go.
Don't let them get wet so that at least if the signals were to come back, you'll be able to connect. Now, having done all of that, there is another important thing which we ask you to do. Keep your documents safe. Now, your identification, your passport, that you may need to be refilled, your land titles and all of those things, keep them safe. Keep them in a safe place. Yes, there would be distribution of benefits without the need for identification, but that would be very limited. In fact, in the humanitarian relief and recovery phase, I would say that most, if not all, the distribution of benefits will require some form of identification because of the accountability issues that even though it's a hurricane, we can't suspend accountability. So keep your identification safe. There are some other things that we would want you to do in being prepared. Speak with your children about the hurricane because they are going through their own uncertainty crises, which you may not immediately recognize. They may not take it seriously. Some may think of it as fun and they may run outside and run in the rain playing football and accidents can happen. We urge you to have a frank discussion about what to expect in a hurricane and why it is important to stay sheltered during the hurricane. We don't want to have any deaths during the hurricane. And an important part of that is to keep your household inside safe. Outside of that, communities are an important response tool to the hurricane. I remember during Gilbert, the community in which I live, everyone came together. And that helped to keep the community safe. It helped to deal with emergencies and just good old sitting down, talking, dealing with the challenges that would have occurred. In today's parlance, we say it helps with the mental health. So community is important. Looking on your neighbor, reach out to your neighbor, find out what is happening, ask how you can help, or ask for help. Very important. Outside of that, there is the local government response. And Minister Mackenzie would have addressed this issue of what the local government is tasked and resourced to do. And then there is the national response. Now, I know that at this time, there are many persons who simply have no resources at all. They are not able to go to the supermarket and buy even one bag of crackers. I am aware. And we have tasked the Ministry of Social Security to start to pre-position supplies, but in all reality, we wouldn't be able to get supplies to everyone who is genuinely in need of the supplies. The most immediate first responder is usually, it's either your church or your member of parliament or your councillor, the police. So we are going to make provisions for the councillors and the members of parliament to be able to, where they can, because they are humans too and they wouldn't be able to be out in the storm, but as much as they can, we will resource them to be able to assist. They will, and I'll be clear with this, they will not be able to assist every case. It's just physically not possible. But in as much as cases are brought to their attention, their network of workers and community activists and so forth would have brought cases to their attention, then we can assist. We are very grateful and very thankful for the philanthropic organizations that exist in certain communities that are already starting to mobilize and doing work. We intend to reach out to most and cooperate with them and assist them in being able to get supplies and distribute. Which leads me to another point of preparedness nationally. And that at this time, there must be a unified position with all the civic stakeholders and all our political stakeholders. And so I have been in communication with the leader of the opposition. We should meet today at, I believe, 12:30, and I will give the opposition a full brief. I'm certain that they will have suggestions which we will listen to and take on board. And if determined, then we will have a Zoom call with members of parliament. I know many of them are in the field, so it depends on how many that we would be able to mobilize. But we have already provisioned them with resources to clean drains and gullies. I know many of them are out in the field supervising these works. From being a member of parliament myself and having gone through this many, many times over, your constituents are of the belief that every drain and every gully is going to be cleaned. That may not be possible. Certainly, you would need much more equipment mobilized than we have capabilities to do, much more supervision. And so what the MPs would be doing would be trying to concentrate on the main ones. That is where their efforts would be. So if you didn't see the drain running behind your yard being clean, don't believe that no work is happening. Work is happening, but it may not be in your locality. That is being monitored by the NWA, and we will get a report very soon as to how many drains we were able to clean. That is indeed a very important preemptive action when it comes to treating with flooding. So outside of that, from an administrative point of view, all our entities have been tasked and mobilized. I suspect all the officers understand what the mission is. It is, from all indications, it is going to be a direct hit, and all of Jamaica will be impacted. I urge everyone to be wise about this, to put aside the nervousness and the anxiety, and be practical, prepare, as I have outlined, how we should be prepared, and continue to pray. We have seen hurricanes at the last moment take a turn for the better. And I still have hope that the impact will not be as bad as it is shaping up to be. But we will prepare for the worst and continue to pray for the best. The impact, whatever it is, the preparation can have some mitigating effect on the impact, but the real work starts the hour after the impact. And what we have done in terms of national preparedness is to put everything in place to be able to respond the hour after the impact. And that is how quickly we intend to recover from this hurricane. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. You would have heard earlier from Minister Vaz. You also heard from Minister Mackenzie, Minister Green, and also Minister Samuda. If you have any questions, and Prime Minister just closed out, and I see the Observer has the first question.
Good morning. Good morning still, Prime Minister. A quick one for you. You speak about the recovery. In your administration had started a cat bond with the World Bank with about US $150 million. Not sure if Hurricane Beryl triggered that catastrophe bond, and is it still in place?
Still in place.
Still in place.
Melissa. Still in place, yes.
And how will we trigger it, PM?
No, I hope it's not triggered. As I stand here, I don't want it to be triggered.
What triggers it?
Yeah. It is dependent on the level of damage. And I think it's also dependent on the wind, the wind category. Mm-hmm. So we're hopeful that we don't have significant winds, which would translate to not having significant damage.
All right. Nationwide.
Morning, Prime Minister. Morning to the room again. Given, we spoke with Evan Thompson earlier, he was telling us that different places are at different risks based on their characteristics. Persons in hilly areas might be susceptible to landslides, those in the coast might be susceptible to flooding. Given that we have MPs in here, the question to all the MPs would be, based on the characteristics of your constituency, are there any special warnings you want to give to the constituents in terms of areas that may be susceptible to a different type of damage compared to somewhere else? Are there any specific instructions?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't want to call out areas. I usually leave that to the technical persons because I don't know all the areas. But let's take Port Royal, for example. So Port Royal is a low-lying area. Just the nature of that peninsula would leave it vulnerable. And we ask the persons there to take precautions. I would have come in at the tail end of the presentation of Minister Mackenzie. And I can understand the reluctance of persons who are attached to that community and attached to the land. They don't want to be displaced, and they want to be able to protect their assets. But my advice to them, because it's no advice, I'm awaiting the minister's recommendation for it to become a compulsory order to relocate, to go to a shelter, because a shelter would be open, and I believe the shelter, Minister Mackenzie, would be the arena and Windward Road Primary. I would recommend that they make contact with family and make arrangements to.
The future doesn't need bystanders. It needs self-starters with limitless ambition, eager to look at our challenges and step up. At UMass, be the future you want to see. Be revolutionary.
They are quite resourceful, and I've seen some do the sandbanking, channeling, and all kinds of other measures. But given not just the severity in terms of the projected wind and rain, but this other to evacuate. Now, the compulsory evacuation comes with the provision of transportation. We won't be able to do it in all cases, but in most cases, I would say 90% of the cases, we will provide transportation to move you to safe ground. Taking a risk with your life.
Muda with us, and we will also have Minister Floyd Green. We have our reps from ODPEM 2 and Met Service will be coming up shortly to give you an update on where this storm is. I know there's a lot of fatigue. This morning I had one person call and say that they're just suffering from a lot of anxiety, because usually we know a hurricane comes after a few days. You know, you see the hurricane. We've seen this hurricane just linger. And so I know there's a lot of stress. And so we say to you, listen to these ministers, listen to the official sources, and we are giving you the best information we can so that you and your family can be safe. And so we're going to start with Minister Vaz this morning, who's giving you some critical updates.
Good morning, Jamaica. Not sure how good the morning is, but we are here alive and well, so we give God thanks. So everything else remains based on the two last updates that I gave yesterday and the day before, save and except for 4 areas of my portfolio responsibility. Let me start with the airports. It is very important that persons know so that they can plan. So we'd have indicated this morning that both the Norman Manley International Airport and the Sangster International Airport in Montego Bay would remain open for today's scheduled flights. Subsequent to that, I've had a conversation with airports authorities before coming here, and a decision has been taken to close Norman Manley International Airport after the last flight that is scheduled to arrive in Jamaica at 8 p.m. tonight. So let me say that